Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all of the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I would like to call this committee of the whole meeting for March 12th to order. Council. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? And nothing from council. Administration?
Nothing from administration.
May I have a motion to adopt, please? And Councilor McGowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting for March the 12th, 2024 as presented.
Thank you very much. And council, the committee adopt the agenda as presented. Please vote now. And that is carried. And I do have to say that our mayor is joining us via Zoom. And are we awaiting Councillor Chambers? Does anyone know?
Chair through to the committee, Councillor Chambers is unavailable this evening. We're at the Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association conference, and she has other duties.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to carry on with citizen minute with council. Or anyone? And we have no one for the citizen minute with council. We'll carry on with our delegation today. Our first and only delegation is the 4.1, the RCMP presentation with staff Sergeant Gregory. Thank you.
Thank you. Come before you to talk to you about the 2024-2025 policing priorities for the town of Hinton and Yellowhead County. I believe you all have a copy of today's presentation. So today we will talk about the 2023-2024 policing priorities as our year ends April 1st, current crime trends as well as stats, and then go into the 2024-2025 future policing priorities for next year. So our current priorities were to decrease injury collisions, decrease property crime, specifically theft, and increase community engagements in the town of Hinton. Numbers so far are quarter 3. Our quarter 4 won't until April 1st. So quarter 3, we saw for increased enforcement, our goal was 1,000 tickets, and we're currently at 423. Increased joint force operations. That means working with other agencies for traffic enforcement. Our year to date is 10, and continuing with the traffic working group, and our year to date meetings is 3. The results is we currently are at 26 injury collisions, and we were looking to decrease the number from 36 collisions last year to 30 this year. In regards to property theft, crime reduction, our measures were to increase condition checks, warrant statements, search warrants, and hotspot patrols. Our results from Q3 were property crime has increased. We currently are at 112 files this quarter, and 244 year to date for theft files being reported. Third one was to maintain positive relations. Our measures were community engagements, coffee with a cop, Yellowhead patrols, and increased patrols other than in a police vehicle. The results of Q3, we've had really great buy-in from the members. Training opportunities, we've received a number of SKUs to the detachment. We do have a business case for a side-by-side from Yellowhead County, and we are looking for training in mountain biking this year, as well as foot patrols through the licensed services throughout Hinton. The next page, you'll see pros files by year, and you'll see that 2023, we were currently at 4,328 files, which is higher than any of the other previous years from 2019 to 2022. Pros files by month. You can see in May and June appears to be our busiest months. Compared to 2022, which you can see that we were quite a bit lower during those months. Top 10 file types. You'll see on this from January 2023 to December 2023, our highest top file was for mischief. And then below that, we end up with suspicious persons. But to note, a lot of those files are drug related, being suspicious persons. I explained this to other people. Why don't we see increase on drug files? It's because a lot of times we get called to people loitering in a parking lot, which come in as suspicious persons. So that's why those numbers are quite high. Top 10 file types. So this is by workload per member, and you'll see mental health is at the top of the list, and mainly because we have to transport to Edmonton. So those files do take up, with transport time, could take up to 5-6 hours to deal with. On to the next page, discussion for 2024-2025. So as we look forward to the new year, we're looking for input from town council as well as residents of Hinton and other stakeholder groups, such as not-for-profit groups. And I've had quite a bit of feedback in regards to certain areas of our APP. I would like to keep the goals the same. I still believe APP annual performance priorities.
Okay.
Yeah. So main goals going forward, I'd like to keep them the same, but change the initiatives. So I still believe that we have a theft problem here in Hinton that we need to decrease, as well as Yellowhead County. And when I say that, we also are driving the call volume up because we are out there and telling people to report crimes. We're going to the mine and we're asking them to report when they have found property that has been stolen, which hasn't been reported in the past. So we are also driving these numbers up so that we have the intel. Create safer roads in and around Hinton and Yellowhead County through enforcement. With the decrease of ATE here in Hinton, we need to increase education and enforcement on our end of things. And I have utilized, because of our staffing, we have been down a number of spots, and I've utilized that budget through a safe roads program, which I've created so that members on their off day, if they would like to go out, to utilize those money to do enforcement, either through joint force operations or on their own on the highways in and around Hinton and throughout Hinton. So I am requesting community feedback as well as feedback from the town council, if that is what they believe should be our focus going forward. And subject to any questions that you may have in regards to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Council. I'll open the floor for questions. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Sergeant, for everybody. Question about, as we hear a lot about the sheriffs being utilized in other communities, I'm just wondering, and maybe it's because there's a difference between RCMP and sheriff, but the transportation of mental health clients to the city, would that be something that the sheriff department could do instead of the RCMP? And that'll be my first part.
That's a very good question. I do know that we recently got 4 sheriffs and they are stationed out here to the west between us and Jasper, and they are specific traffic to the highways. I don't know what their powers would be under the Mental Health Act. Where we struggle with mental health, with the Mental Health Act, is that we are not a designated facility here. So if we determine somebody's at risk and we place them under arrest under the Mental Health Act, we have to transport them to Edmonton. But on that end of things, we also have an RPAC member, and I believe a nurse is boarding very soon. I believe they're just going through a security clearance. So once we have that nurse on board, I believe our numbers will cut down because they are proactive in the sense that they can reach out and get help for these people before they become arrested by us to take. And we're still gonna have those situations, but I really believe that it will decrease the amount of time that we spend doing that transport. The sheriffs are very much their separate entity, and we are our separate entity. We don't even use the same radios. And so we do back them up and they back us up, but we are very separate. So I believe we'd be a bit of a passing of liability by giving them to the sheriff to transport. But I've never looked into that, to be honest.
Yeah, if I could follow up then, Madam Chair. I guess because my thought is that, you know, because I think their primary, I hear a lot in the news about drug houses and things like that in the cities. So those are joint efforts between the city and the sheriffs, or they're their entities, so it's not a combined effort. They've just given them that ability to do that in those areas. Is that?
The Alberta government's really
Mhm.
increased the amount of powers that they have, which is very welcome because they do scan safe communities and neighborhoods. And so they come in and do surveillance. I know they recently set up a warrant roundup team out of Edmonton. And if they find success in that, they would be moving into the rural communities to pick up people that are hard to find on warrants. But still very separate entity that
Okay.
I know at one time we were joint, but we're no longer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor.
Two what seem to be dangerous behaviors that I hear about are big trucks running the red lights in town, and then big trucks or other traffic coming into town from Edmonton down that hill. So is there any way to kind of specifically target that behavior to get the message out that you do that kind of thing, we're gonna get you? Like, you know, maybe put try to target, you know, exactly when people do that kind of thing. Like, I assume it's in the evening when people think it's because when you go across a green light, you gotta really look both ways if you wanna. To me, those are two really dangerous behaviors that we should be trying to stop if we can.
So in a perfect world, I would love to have a traffic member here. I do know that we have 2 frozen positions, which means they're just unfunded, they're still available. In a perfect world, I would love to have a RTU member, which is a roaming traffic member. I would like to place them into my GI position so that they are not only doing traffic enforcement, but they're doing drug traffic enforcement. We have a major highway here. We all know criminals move via vehicles. I would like there to be a traffic member so that if I have specific areas that a resident would call me and say, I'm concerned about the truckers driving into town, their speeds seem high. That member would be designated to certain days, they would be trafficked, other days they would be drug enforcement. We recently had a presentation in regards to the Excise Act, where numerous people are bringing unstamped cigarettes into Hinton. I would like this all to be that person's kind of wheelhouse. It's very hard when you're answering calls for service, and in the meantime, you then have to go sit on the highway and wait for semis to come down. We do have an Edson traffic unit, and they do come through our jurisdiction through the highway, and they police all the way to Jasper, Grand Cache. And we have them approximately 2 days a week, which they do quite a bit of enforcement here in Hinton. More so because I know members live here, and so we want our community to be safe from traffic and to slow traffic down as they're coming through our community, right? But in a perfect world, I would love to see one of those positions funded so that we can get drug enforcement and traffic enforcement through.
Would you like to do a follow-up, sir?
Is there no automated technology that can help you identify when some of that's occurring so you can be more efficient with your time?
The only time I've had automated ways to see where we need traffic enforcement was done through Global. Global would monitor, and they would sit in certain areas and find out where the higher speeds were and at what times. I don't have the ability to do that. It would come in through Global to provide that information.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Council, any other questions? Council McGowan?
Yeah, I suppose Staff Sergeant, my concern goes back to those frozen positions that you mentioned. I had mentioned this concern when we were talking about the budget a while ago. Is it fair to say that our ability to respond to safety issues in town is impacted by the fact that those positions are currently frozen? We don't have as many personnel.
So we currently are sitting with, plus those unfunded positions, I am also down 3 positions. I do have 3 members coming in. I have 2 members from Fort Mac and 1 member from Slave Lake coming in the next couple of months. Am I saying the unfunded positions are causing, we live in a very safe community. We all live here, and the response to calls for service are, we keep the quality high. Could we do more with more positions? Yes, we could. I like the mandate that the RTU unit has set out. It's a unit out of Edmonton, and I've gotten all the specifics on the units. Because those types of things, we did have a traffic position here that I utilized one of the frontline members as a traffic position. And I was able to say, you know, Crescent Valley has issues with people speeding through. I would like you down there. I have semi speeding through town. I would like you there. So it was very specific that I'm able to guide them where I would like and reach out to those residents versus, yeah, I'll ask members to make patrols during that time. I feel as though I could do better in those regards, because if members are called away to calls, I don't have anybody to make those patrols.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor McGowan. And if nothing else, Councilor Taylor.
Well, I only ask because we're gonna spend an awful lot of money maybe on fixing up safety issues in the valley regarding what's that avenue called, Athabasca?
Yes.
So because it's in order of safety, what specific safety issues are you aware of in that area? Because we're looking at doing all sorts of things related to safety, so I'm wondering if there's what the actual safety problems are in that area. Regarding accidents, near misses, speeding, ticketing, you know, what do the actual files that we have show in the way of safety in that area?
I would have to pull stats. I have never run stats in regards to that. Am I aware of any specific where the police have been called to deal with safety issues in that area? I am not aware of those. We more get calls to the semis that are parked on the surface road. We get quite a few safety calls there. But I wouldn't be able to answer your question without running stats.
Yeah, no, that answer's good enough. I'm not aware of any actual safety incidents either. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I have no one else in queue. I'd like to thank you, Staff Sergeant, very much for your presentation.
Well, Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through the chair to Staff Sergeant Frangameni. You and I have spoken in the past about some of the rumors about the human trafficking situation in the town. Could you update council and administration on where we stand on the subject?
Yes, approximately last fall, there was a media release that came out. Somebody came forward stating that they knew of somebody, third-hand information, they knew of somebody that had to pay for a letter in order from their employer to stay in Hinton from a outside country. The media release was put out as an educational piece, more so if somebody was doing this, that we're asking them to stop. It is it's hard to get people to come forward and bring that information to us because it's the hand that feeds them. So we understand it would put them in a very difficult position. So the media release was put out more so that it's an educational piece, and if somebody would come forward, we would further investigate it, but I can confirm that that file has been concluded. We had nobody come forward, and the person who reported it was third-hand information.
Mr. Mayor, are you good?
No, I'd like a follow-up, and Staff Sergeant, are there any other files or have there been any other files from other than that single file that you mentioned?
No, there hasn't.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, Staff Sergeant, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Council, we're gonna move on to our reports from administration. We'll start with 5.1. You'll find that on page 16 of your agenda, and that is the education fund from Trans Mountain. Neil?
Thank you, Chair. I will refer this one to Ms. Borgo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee. This item in before you, I couldn't find any notes in the file that I picked up that this information had come before you. If you've already set a framework for this, please bear with me and I'll work to catch up. But from notes in the file, this has essentially remained dormant since approximately 2020 when the agreement was signed with Trans Mountain. There were 3 items on the agreement. Monies left to the community from Trans Mountain. 2 of them had to do with the bike parking on Rob Road. So this would be the 3rd initiative yet to fill in. I have been in touch with Trans Mountain Pipeline and they are anxious for us to create the framework for these monies under their purview of what the money is intended to do for the community and ensure that our next reporting to them has some activity on it. So what was written for you is simply a sample of what we could do. The money is intended to create educational opportunities in trades, technology, or environmental programs that could, upon graduation or successful completion, relate to the pipeline industry. It's also meant to remove barriers and to help individuals from the community in accessing these educations. So with that, I will take any further questions from committee on this matter.
Thank you very much. I'll open the floor up for questions, Council. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Is there a requirement to have lived here for a while before you're eligible for one of these things? Like a couple of years? They go to school here or lived here for at least 2 years?
Through to all of the committee. So those would be parameters that it would be up to us to set. There would not be a recommendation one way or the other from Trans Mountain. They just remind us that the money was entrusted to the town for our community or to support the residents of the community. They didn't recommend tying graduation from one of our programs because people could have attended high school, not graduated, and later on in life received acceptance to study post-secondary education. So requiring graduation from one of our high schools would, in their eyes, create a barrier. But someone from our community who maybe left high school and is now eligible through upgrading or whatever means they went through to attend post-secondary, that would satisfy it.
Okay, no, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking at least they have to live here for a while. You know.
They should be. It is recommended that it is somehow tied to the community. But that said, you study a degree program, that's not going to happen with somebody currently living in our community. They would have had to leave our community most likely in order to take on that program. So perhaps they attended high school here, they're within the age limit that is eventually set by committee on the parameters under the bursary program, so would make them eligible to apply.
Good, sir.
This was for degrees? I thought this was for like technical training.
It could be trades, environmental programs,
Oh, I
some
see.
of them are 2 and 3 degree, could be post-secondary for certificate. They're mainly aligning with the trades, technology and environmental. They're not designating that it has to be just a 4 years apprenticeship program or the 2-year certificate.
I have just a quick question. So will you be reaching out to our local apprenticeship office here to talk about what the apprentices biggest hurdles are when they're going to school?
through the Olive Committee, that definitely can be some of the next activity. At this point, administration is really seeking some input from committee as to if you see this helping 3 students and their large scholarships from start to finish, or if we're doing bursary more for a longevity and applying it to more people.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, and I guess my question is, having worked with, the scholarship side of things from the high school level. Has administration talked about the vision moving forward over successive years for who would sort of serve as the selection committee? If there were multiple applications?
Through to Olive Committee. So those are also questions that we're looking at in the formatting of. But really, we're here as a touch point, because to create an entire program and come before committee and not have it be the vision of current committee and what you would like seeing, then it would be reworking work already done. So this is here very much in the infancy stages. Research has been done into income level thresholds as far as other grant and scholarship programs. We've done research with other communities who have done similar programs with this money. There are communities that receive the same money that are choosing instead to do a straight reimbursement program for people that need help through transportation costs and attending post-secondary, but they are more from an area where daily commute is what they're undertaking in order to attend school.
Follow up, Madam Chair, and it's more of just a comment to consider. And certainly I would agree with not necessarily limiting it to high schools, because I think there's a benefit to making sure that it has some reach. But one of the benefits in working with the high schools is that once those criteria are established, at least at Harry College when I was there was already a awards committee that when they had the criteria for a given award, they could do most of the footwork for that up front. So the nice thing, as long as the criteria is clear, they basically will have those internal discussions and then recommend to whoever is backing the bursary that these be the nominees in a given year. So the process is quite easy on the school side of things. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council, I am looking for a direction on this. And now I'll look to you, CAO, if I'm not getting a direction or anything coming back from council, do we just move on to our next item? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take the recommended action. The committee requests administration to continue development of a bursary program that aligns with the study and barrier reduction parameters set by Trans Mountain Pipeline LP that will provide benefit to 18 recipients over a 4-year period and return to a future committee of the whole meeting for further discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And council, we do have a direction. And Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, I'm happy to support that option. I think it's reasonable. It spreads it out over 6 individuals potentially per year, and we can focus on the details of what that program might look like a little bit further down the road. I think as a 32,000 foot, that's a good start.
And Councilor Taylor.
Why does this have to come back to us, to the committee of whole for another discussion?
Through the Olive Committee, it doesn't necessarily have to return to committee. Simply didn't want to take latitude that wasn't administration's to take as far as putting a program into, or the structure of a program in place that council or committee didn't feel they had proper opportunity in order to have discussion on.
Yeah, and I think maybe too, it might be a little unfair to put all of that on administration. Because I mean, without even looking at people who aren't in high school, immediately the first question you might encounter is, okay, well, which school is gonna get how many bursaries? Is it gonna be, you know, call it 9 and 9, you know, or are we gonna divide it up that, you know, non-traditional students are gonna get 4 of those bursaries? And well, this high school doesn't have as many high school students as this high school does. So again, I do think there's probably more discussion to be had down the road, but I appreciate administration's work so far.
Sure, Councilor House.
Yeah, first off, I'll be in support of this, and yeah, I think I'm interested in, as Councilor Magoon said, there seems to be a process for the high school graduations, but it's those, you know, 20+ that I'm interested to see what that criteria will be. If it'll have a financial component to it, like, you know, looking at their income versus, you know, because that can also stretch out. So yeah, I think that, you know, giving administration time to put that together and give us a sense of, you know, what other communities are doing and what other organizations are doing, and then coming back into committee, I think is probably best practice for this. And then we can put our seal on it and at a regular later on. So, but I am excited about this because, you know, to your question, we haven't seen this before. So this is the first time we've seen this that I recall. And I think this is exciting. And I hear, you know, going to graduations in this community, there are some bursaries that are substantial. And I think being able to put our name with Trans Mountain on these is also significant. But I'm excited to see it expand to other age groups too. Does not just high school. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor House. Council, anything else before I call a question? Ms. McDougall? Okay, our direction is, the committee requests administration to continue development of the bursary program that aligns with the study and barrier reduction parameters set by Trans Mountain Pipeline LP that will provide benefit to 18 recipients over a 4-year period and return to a future committee of the whole meeting for further discussion. Okay, before I call the question, any questions from council? And council, I've read it off, you're reading it, please vote now. And that is carried, thank you very much. Council, any other questions on this before we move on? I do have one question, so we could see several people, bursaries for 4 consecutive years previously.
Through the committee, structured in that way, they would have to do an application at least 2 times because each bursary, as said in the sample, allowed for a year 1 and a year 2.
Yeah, okay. Good. All right, thank you very much. So we're gonna move on to 5.2, which is page 18 on your agenda, and that is the transit program review and fleet options. CAO.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this over to Ms. Duke.
Thank you, and through the chair to the rest of committee. This report is being brought to committee in part for a program review prior to bringing its level of service policy to committee. And secondly, to discuss fleet options for Hinton Transit going forward. At the end of August 2024, the town will conclude a 10-year contract for the supply of vehicles and maintenance services used in Hinton Transit. The administration needs considerable lead time to ensure a new supplier is in place and ready to go by that time. The contract window is an optimal time for committee to review the program as well as to consider what options we have for fleet to operate the program. For example, gas versus hybrid vehicles, and whether to continue with an external contractor or remove the service wholly within the house. And just to distinguish, so Freedom Express is a separate service that together they form the transportation service. Freedom Express is done entirely in-house, just to clarify that. at this time. So the report before you outlines the service level by showing the split of responsibilities that currently we have for service between the contractor and the town. It talks about the days and times of operation and provides statistics on ridership, revenue, and expense from 2023. We didn't include fare rates, but I can talk about that if need be today. So following that outline, there's an outline of the options for go forward, including vehicle types we might consider, either now or in the short-term future, and the relative merits of external contracting versus bringing the supply of fleet and maintenance in-house. So that's a lot in one report. Administration is recommending the committee refer the matter of the service level to a future committee meeting, perhaps with direction, and provide input on the various options in the vehicles and the service. Thank you. With that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to open the floor for questions from council. And Councilor Doonan.
So we can discuss it. I'd like to take the recommended action, Madam Chair, and move that committee reach consensus that administration returns a draft level of service policy for transportation to a future meeting of committee. And then if I could speak to it, please.
Certainly.
Yeah. The first step, I think, in discussing the level of service, and I apologize, Ms. Jupe, for cribbing a little bit, but the messaging is important. Citizens need to understand that we're at a natural point where if we're looking at that contract again, this is a good time to simply review what we're offering in terms of service to the community, so we can make sure that we're running at max efficiencies and we know what we're doing, and we can have an informative conversation with any potential contractors moving forward. It's important to set that stage, because otherwise people might potentially misinterpret a direction like this in standing committee, that, it's council looking to get rid of a service or, cut it or something like that. Again, it's important to give the community that reassurance that this is a natural process that we look at as we turn over contracts, so that our potential contractors are fully informed. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Ms. McDougal, can you put the motion up so everybody can see it? Thank you very much. Councilor Stasha.
So I just would have a question for administration. Just wondering what administration is looking for feedback or input today, what information. Yeah, I guess that's it.
So through the chair to the rest of the committee, I guess the two main questions that we have going forward is, does the town want to consider alternative types of fuel vehicles? So that is, when we go to RFP, if we do that for an external contractor, do we want to invite proposals for hybrid vehicles, for example, or stick with gas or go full EV? The other question is internal or external supply and servicing. Currently, we maintain the Hinton Freedom Express bus ourselves, and we operate that fully. We supply, we own the bus. Currently, we've been doing contracted supply. There's always a cost to that. There's at least a 20 to 25% estimated cost for external contracting in terms of their profit margin and their administrative overhead, which we already have. And it's the first one we don't need. So those are the questions, I think, vehicle types and whether or not to continue with an external provider.
Yeah, can I follow up?
Certainly.
So this is where I'm challenged a little bit. I'll be blunt. I have no idea. I don't know. There's not enough information in this report for me to be able to make an informed decision. There's not extensive numbers. There's not comparators to other years. There's the data for this year, but that's it. For me to make an assessment on what would be best moving forward, I'm at a loss today. All I know is it's significantly subsidized by tax dollars to run this program.
Sure. Councilor Taylor.
I see you open ask wanted to respond.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you, Chair, to Councilor Stashik. The intent really for today is, because we do know that that bus contract is coming due, is what is council's interest in looking into this? Because we don't expect a decision on anything. We're not prepared to be able to facilitate that, but is council interested, number one, in looking at the service? Where are we happy with the service? And then number two is there an interest in taking a look at the structure? We've offered it this way, I believe, since the inception of the transit program. But if there is a desire for council to take a look at the structure and how we provide the service, that would be the other question. But again, at a very high level, we're not looking for decisions on those items. But, you know, is council happy with the service? Do we want to investigate any additional structures? Those are the questions that we're asking today.
Sorry, can I follow up again?
Certainly.
It's directly related, so. I appreciate the explanation, thank you for that, but I'm not sure how that is reflected in the direction request, though. The direction request is to bring a draft level of service policy, so without that input. How does council give direction on which way they would like administration to go in terms of changes if the directions to bring back a draft level of service policy?
Go ahead, sir.
Through the chair, I think those would be subsequent motions. If there's subsequent motions, that would complement bringing a service level policy, but at the very high level, we do think that this is the right time to be looking at program review, which really is levels of service, because ultimately council will have to pass that. But if there is subsequent direction on council would like to look at, alternatives for bringing in-house, we can include that as motion. Or electric buses, because I hear that Edmonton's selling the cheaper right now. But there's a whole variety of motions, but if there is any interest in looking at anything specific, we've identified our intent here. But we want to make sure that we're on the right track, so when we do bring it forward, council's happy with it. And that was a joke, we aren't looking at electric at this point in time, we are a part of a study looking at electrification. But we have looked at the different options that we intend on bringing forward, which is in-house, looking at buses, either regular gasoline, hybrid fuel, contracting out in-house, or a combination of the two. So that's our intent. We want to make sure that council's, our intent is aligned with council's expectation of what this program would look like, because this is going to, we think the timeline might be relatively tight on this. We do hope for a relatively quick turnaround.
Thank you, appreciate the clarification, thank you, Madam Chair.
So Councillor Taylor, did you have your hand up
Yeah,
a long time ago?
I'm in no rush.
I'm sorry.
I'm in no rush. I'm retired.
Okay, so we have Councillor Taylor, we have Councillor Haas, I believe, and McGowan. So Councillor Taylor, we'll start with you.
Looks like we're into this comprehensive study to inform procurement and deployment of zero emission buses. Do we have a commitment to actually follow through with this? Do we have to buy an electric if we don't want them?
Thank you. Through the chair to the rest of the committee. No, this is a no-cost study that we're participating in. We'll receive some empirical evidence about EV modeling for our current, based on our current service, whether or not it's feasible, whether or not it's a low-cost option that will actually save us money. That's the payoff for this study. We are not conducting this study, and we are not paying to participate in the study. It's being hosted by Alberta municipalities and funded in part by Fortis and in part by the federal government.
And we have no commitment to follow the rules.
Not at all.
Perfect.
You good, sir? Yes. Councillor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was of the same mind. I'm in favor of number one option, but I'm also in favor of number two, because without number two, and having that information and, then the service level is impacted potentially. So I'd like to actually just make an amendment to add option two to the already standing motion, that we just combine the two together.
And before we move ahead on your amendment, or do I have to stop and take a look at this amendment right now? Or can I get Councillor McGowan's comments? Because he was in queue.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I require some clarification on Councillor Ha's statement on option 2 in the RFD. From my perspective, there are multiple option 2s. Are you talking about the option 2 on page 3 at the very end of the RFD that states the committee reached consensus to explore options to reduce costs for transit fleet supply and maintenance?
That is
Et
correct,
cetera.
including a contracting for gasoline or hybrid supply, maintenance, moving and supply, the supply and maintenance in-house. That's what I'm referring to, yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. So right now we have a direction. We have an amendment to that direction, and we have Councillor McGowan. Waiting. So
I can speak to the amendment, Madam Chair, and still accomplish what I'd like. Yeah, I'm supportive of that. I think, again, it gives a little bit more specificity to the direction coming out of standing committee, and that's it.
all right, and Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to speak in favor of the amendment as well. Looking at page 2 in our agenda package where we have supply methods. And item number 3, it talks about combination contract in-house through a short to mid-term contract for gradual transition to in-house. And it lists off that this option could also allow the town to position itself for federal grants anticipated in the 2025 to 2027 timeframe. From my conversations with higher levels of government, I hear a lot of rumors of transit funding coming. I think that at this time we have a great advantage or opportunity as the town of Hinton with this contract coming up to really set ourselves up for success in getting some of those transit grant funds when they're announced and they come available. I'm going to state right now, I'd also be interested in having administration do some coordination with our federal partners immediately to the west in Jasper National Park. I know they have an interest in a regional transit system, and they may be able to come with funding for something like that as well. So I support this amendment at this time. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Councillor Strasser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to look to administration to make sure that amending that to have it roll into option 1 makes sense procedurally. Or if option 2 should be separate and then the results of that would feed back to a future direction regarding option 1. I'm asking because it matters to me about whether I'm going to support this or not.
See you.
Through the chair to members of council, I would actually probably look at it a little bit differently and deciding, what the intent or what the level of service council envisions is. And then from there, deciding what the best structure in order to accomplish that would be. I think would be probably the how we do it. But I'm fine with combining both because if council does want to take a look at both of those items, I think it's important to get that on the books. Once we do that through administration, we can ensure that we navigate that appropriately and bring it forward in the right step. So I don't have any concerns with bringing both forward, as long as we know that council has an interest in reviewing both of these items related to the transit program. I think that's the main intent for us as administration.
I can follow up. In that case, I'll be supporting the proposed motion. For me, though, number 2 is the most important part before moving ahead with number 1 in the options. I need to have a better understanding of what options are and costs and viability of different models that could be brought forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So when we talk about level of service and transit, level of service incorporates everything. So right now, our level of service is we don't run on Sunday and we don't run on holidays. So we would be taking a look at that also.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Haas,
No, I'm good. Thank you.
you're good. Councillor Taylor,
Well, sure, I'll vote for it. But I'm sure that Edmonton did a very thorough analysis of their electric buses before they got into it. We all know how that turned out. No, I don't think that electrical use in a northern climate is gonna work well for anybody. But let's look at it.
So, council, anything else before we take a look at the amendment? And nothing? So council, we have an amendment to our, the main direction, and I will call this that committee reached consensus that administration returns a draft level of service policy for transportation to a future meeting of committee. And that committee reached consensus to explore options to reduce costs for transit fleet supplies and maintenance, including contracting out for gasoline or hybrid bus supply and maintenance, or moving the supply and maintenance in-house.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If I may, we're only voting to add that committee reach consensus to explore those options. We already have a standing direction on the consensus for the draft level of service. So we're only voting on the last part of that at this current time. Am I not
Oh,
correct?
oh, my
I
apologies.
amended it to add option 2 to it, to Councilor Magoon's original.
Yeah, my mistake. I thought you were adding the option 2 to option 1.
I am,
You are.
but but we're only voting on that part at this point.
Okay, and can you repeat that part that we're focusing on again?
That committee reached consensus to explore options to reduce the cost for transit fleet supply and maintenance, including contracting out for gasoline or hybrid bus supply and maintenance, or moving the supply and maintenance in-house. That's the amendment that I'm proposing to add.
I'm sure you take your time. Take your time. This is your amendment.
Yes.
Looks okay to you?
Mhm.
Hey, council, I'm gonna read it one more time so we're all clear on the amendment that we're gonna be voting on. The committee moved to amend the original motion. The committee reached consensus to explore options to reduce costs for transit fleet supply and maintenance, including contracting out for gasoline or hybrid bus supply and maintenance, or moving the supply and maintenance in-house. And as soon as that comes up. And council, please vote no. And that has carried. Thank you very much. And now we're gonna move to our main direction. Council, any questions? Anything before I call the question? Councilor Taylor.
Well, if this is a service, a level of service policy. When we'd be looking at, the 26,700 rides per year. And, the fact that, we're providing that to everybody as opposed to providing it for low income people. And when we also be looking at the fact that this, if you do the math, this looks like it works out to a $10.60 per ride subsidy. And that our buses drive around empty a lot of the time. Is that stuff that's all gonna factor into this somehow? And do we want to continue on with the $10.60 per ride subsidy? If you do the math on this, 26,700 rides divided by the number of hours per day, number of days per week, etc. 7 rides per hour is what it works out to. Is that a service that we want to continue at that level? Is there a more efficient way to do it?
CEO.
Through the chair and members of the council. Yes, when we're doing the program review, that's all going to be a part of it. And the service that we decide on is going to dictate ultimately how much that program is going to be subsidized and whether that's in alignment with what council wants. So yes, all of those things will be discussed through the program review.
Councilor House.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that conversation, and that's why I think it's essential we understand what we're currently doing, but then having the second part now as to, you know, can we be doing it more efficiently? Is there another option, whether it's maintenance in-house or contracting? You know, but we have those numbers because in fact, you know, there is a possibility that, you know, maybe the service could increase potentially versus decrease because maybe there's some more cost efficient ways of doing it, you know, and it really boils down to the fleet and the maintenance of it and things like that we're already paying. So I think having that lens and having that information, then comparing it to what we're doing now and what we could be doing or less doing, more doing, is I think will answer a lot of what Councilor Taylor and I'm hoping to also have in this program as well. So I'll be in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question. When we do this big review, will we be going out to the ridership, to the bus drivers, to our citizens, asking them?
Through the chair to the rest of committee, typically a user survey is not part of a service level review. It's the instructions and how the tactical plan is actually written is to capture the current level of service for council's consideration as a policy. Policies again are amendable at any time. So at any time, council can ask for the policy to be brought back for amendment for reduction or increase in the service level. The task being to capture it at least so that it's articulated and committee can see that on paper.
Thank you very much. Council, anything else on this before we call a question? And Councilor Taylor.
Other than distress for the public, that this is a service that costs us a net cost of $283,000 per year. And it gets subsidized at $10.60 per ride. People should know that.
Thank you, sir. And seeing nothing else, Ms. McDougall. So the direction before us, council, I will call the question.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, please.
That motion should contain and then the option number 2 that was listed in the amendment.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Madam Chair, if I will. We can remove just and that committee reach consensus just to and to explore options to reduce costs. Yeah, thank you.
And I will call to question or call the question. The committee reached consensus that administration returns a draft level of service policy for transportation to a future meeting committee. And to explore options to reduce costs for transit fleet supply and maintenance, including contracting out for gasoline or hybrid bus supply and maintenance, or moving the supply and maintenance in-house. And council, please vote no. And that is carried. Council, anything else on this before we move forward? And Councillor Ostache.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate the amendment to direct administration to look at ways to reduce costs through transit fleet supply and maintenance, but I share a lot of the concerns that Councillor Taylor's put forward. So I do want to actually take it a step further. I'd like to move the committee reach consensus to direct administration to return options to reduce cost and increase revenue through avenues not already directed. At this point, I don't know, sorry if I could speak to it. At this point, I don't know what those are, but I definitely would like to have a closer look at some other options that could be utilized to minimize the amount of subsidy that goes towards funding our transit program. Like I said, I don't know what those are, but I do want administration to take a look at them and bring back some options when they come back to us. I can read the motion again.
That would be great. And we'll
Yeah.
work slow.
Yeah. That committee reached consensus.
Yeah, good.
To direct administration. To return options to reduce cost. And increase revenues. Through avenues not already directed.
And could we see that on screen just to make sure that we captured?
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Council, we do have a direction on the floor, any debate? And Councillor Taylor.
I appreciate that, because that does cover my concern that first motion, just very limited to one way of looking at costs. And I think there are been a number of suggestions on how to overall look at the program that's never been done before for this program in order to get costs reduced. And part of that is looking at the demand systems, and part of that's looking at our subsidized costs over time, our costs per ride, or ridership, the total number of people that we're subsidizing for this service, the total number of people maybe that we should be targeting to subsidize for this service if we want to continue, the fact that this is a unique service for rural Albertans as per that AUMA document that was presented at council a couple of years ago. So, thanks.
Thank you. CAO, did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, and through the chair to members of council, and maybe just to ensure I'm entirely clear, and those options would include, you know. We talked a little bit even at this meeting about, say, regional partnerships or something, looking at something like those types of options, but just. We'll call it some freedom to look outside of the box, look at not just at what we do now and how to maximize the value, but to look elsewhere at different delivery options. That's what this motion is intended to cover, correct?
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, exactly. It's thinking outside the box, delivery options, advertising options. I don't, like I said, I don't know what those options are, but anything could help minimize the subsidization of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor House.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also, I'll be in favor of this, anyway, and I appreciate, outside of the box is, I think important on this, but I want to also just mention to administration, because I don't believe anyone was on, but we did do a survey a while back with some consultants. So there is a binder on the shelf that has a lot of information and input. It has different, a different look at the transit system, improving it to decreasing it to talking about different on-demand things. There was a number of different things that were covered. So I'm hoping administration can also look at that document and see if there's anything, because we paid for it, and there might be something in there that might be useful. So.
And another thing I'd like to bring up, council, is every time the government, whether it's provincial or federal, talks about affordable housing or any type of housing, they link transit to it. Transit is always part of that conversation. So we really gotta keep that in mind. Council, anything else on this direction? Before I call the question, and Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, and we also got to keep in mind that this is costing us like over 2.25% extra on our taxes just to have this service, and the costs of running a municipality are just rising. So we have to be as careful and as efficient as we can, particularly if we want to continue on with the service that so few smaller communities in Alberta provide.
Thank you, sir.
Can't just keep doing everything and expect taxes to stay low.
And seeing no one else, can I see that, please? So I will call the question. The committee reached consensus to direct administration to return options to reduce costs and increase revenues through avenues not already directed. And council, please vote now. And that is carried. Council, anything else on this before we move on? Go ahead, sir.
Since we're potentially
Thank you.
talking a continued foray into the electrical vehicle realm, could I ask how the existing foray into the electrical vehicle realm is working for us? How is that working? We haven't had, say, to transport a vehicle on the back of a pickup truck or something, they have to the back, or how is the electrical vehicle that's got good buy-in by staff and stuff like that?
Through the chair to all the committee, I actually took the opportunity to ask the user of the vehicle how it was going. He shared his thoughts with me. He thought it was going very well. On any given day, he uses about 50% of the battery. Even through the cold, he didn't have too much. Didn't have any real issues. When we were getting the vehicle outfitted, getting to the city and back is a stretch, but that's not what we bought the vehicle for. So there was some difficulties with that kind of thing. We actually put the unit on a trailer to take it to the city and went back and got him again. That was the easiest, quickest way to do it rather than paying employees to sit at a charger. So getting it outfitted was a bit of work, but since it's been put into service, the user had nothing but positive to say about it.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Nissim, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to administration. I don't feel I need a direction on this, but when this comes back to committee, I would really like to see some amortized or some prorated based on mileage cost information about the bus that we run ourselves versus the contracted buses that we have supplied. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, the one thing I thought was odd, in fact, I've heard comments on it, is the 10-year contract for this. Like, that seems like a really long contract, so if we're going to consider a 10-year contract. We could maybe just discuss that when this comes back, like 5 years kind of reasonable, 10-year, there's too much can happen in 10 years for to have a 10-year contract. So if we're gonna do that, it should require an extra discussion.
Thank you, sir. And council, anything else before we move on? And seeing nothing, we're gonna move on to 5.3. And that is the helipad, and that is page 28 in your agenda. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the rest of the committee. So back in May, there was a motion put forward to take a look at a number of different items as advocacy positions or potential advocacy positions for the council. One of those was a helipad, so I am bringing forward a draft report to get council's thoughts on it prior to moving any further on this item, but you know, I actually did have there's only a few heliport engineers in Canada. One happens to be in BC and was nice enough to do a pro bono preliminary assessment for us on his way through to Edmonton. So lots of this has come from that helipad engineer and his initial thoughts. He was nice enough to provide to us on the feasibility of this asset. So starting on page 30, we have a briefing report for council to consider. Page 32, you'll see the location that is being proposed. Some preliminary discussions has been had with Alberta Forestry and the Forestry Center, and they have indicated that, you know, if this was to ever come to fruition, that they would be gracious enough to move their equipment around and provide this space. The helipad engineer has confirmed that this location is a good location, and it could be created to have a certified helipad. Here, there is some work that would need to be done in order to certify this helipad. That would include tree removal, varying of the overhead power lines in the area. That would likely be good enough for multiple entrance locations when it comes to multi-engine helicopters. When it comes to the single engine helicopters, some more work would need to be done if there was some interest in that. Stars only runs multi-engine helicopters, so it's good for Stars. But if we were looking at a partnership with Alberta Forestry, at this time, I don't have a good sense on the single engine helicopters and what type of need they would have for it. So something that would need to be further considered. But generally speaking, you know, this certainly could be done. The estimated cost is approximately 750 to 1.1. That'll depend a lot on the options available. The operating costs are expected to be around 50,000 a year. You know, when it comes to, you know, one of the big questions that I have in the report is the position that council wants to take on this, if any. Right? You know, I think we have three options. One, to advocate for the government to do it. The second would be to advocate to get the land, so the municipality could do it ourselves, or the third is to drop it completely, or any other option that I haven't thought of, but when looking at AHS's criteria for how they prioritize helipads, we do meet all three criteria. And that's the number of missions per year being over 10, the distance by ground to tertiary care of a baseline of 45 minutes, and the distance from an airport being 10 minutes. So we meet or exceed those baselines in all three areas. So that's a very, that would be required if we want to effectively advocate for this. With that being said, AHS, just generally the trends is that AHS is divesting of helipads and they are not building many new ones. I think it certainly would not be a slam dunk, even though we meet those criteria. I think it's, I would expect that if we go down this road, that it would take years of advocacy, but if this is a priority to the community, certainly could be worth it. The Jasper has recently built the helipad, and that was done by Parks Canada. So we do have one in the immediate vicinity. So that would be something to take into consideration. With that said, we're looking, and if you can see in the briefing reports, I've included 2 recommendations, certainly not limited to that, but if we do want to pursue either one of those options, so my question is, which one, if any, do we want to pursue when it comes to a helipad? And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Nissen?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to committee. The CAO mentioned briefly single engine versus multi-engine. In my experience and professional opinion, there's no value in us discussing single engine helicopters whatsoever. All medevac flights are multi-engine in the modern world. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to know the recommended action, please. The committee directs administration to bring back the helipad briefing note with recommendation 1 to a future council meeting. If I could speak to it quickly.
Yes, please.
I concur with everything that's in that briefing note. There's many rural Alberta communities that have helicopter landing pads adjacent to their healthcare centers. Hinton is unfortunately one that doesn't. And I think patients coming to and from our hospitals suffer because of that. They have to be ground transported to the Hinton Jasper Airport before they can be put on either fixed wing or rotary wing or off, which costs time, it's stress on the patients. I think having a helipad adjacent to the hospital would make a world of difference in patient care. I fully advocate for it. It's something I've been looking forward to for a long time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that AHS can help us out with the health outcomes of these kind of choices. So where does it land now, and how much time does this save us, and what does that mean in terms of health outcomes? So AHS should be able to provide that. That's sort of what's missing in this, right? Is how many lives you save, or what critical illnesses do you avoid because you can put somebody in the air 20 minutes or 15 minutes sooner. I think that's what we need, and that's what they could provide us to help us. That would make it a real powerful document, I think.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Nissen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for a point of clarification, the recommended action references a second document with a recommended action. Would it be possible for this motion to print out the entirety of the recommended action from the briefing document, so it it clearly states for the minutes that the town of Hinton requests that the province of Alberta allocate necessary dollars to construct and maintain a certified helipad adjacent to the Hinton Hospital.
Through the chair, yeah, we absolutely can do that.
Did
Thank you,
hear
Madam Chair.
that, Tina?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councillor Sasha.
If that's a request for a friendly amendment, I mean, we've looked all of council, but I would be fine with that.
Councillor Hollis.
Yeah, and I'll be in support of this as well. And I recollect, I think a conversation years ago about this, but I think it was the land part. So I'm really happy to hear that forestry is interested. And I'm interested in, yeah, their partnership in this, because I'm sure that that might be something they could also utilize for their services out of that area as well. But I'm in full support of this. You know, there are many helicopter pads around. Why we don't have one, especially so close to the hospital there and that land. So that you know, we've had that already preliminary conversation. But I do think this is a province of Alberta should, you know, be responsible for this as well. So full support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. McDougall, did you capture that amendment? And if not, I'll not be on it. No.
Madam Chair, but yeah, while we're waiting, I think it's a good story, and I actually think it would possibly, you know, as an advocacy document, we could include in here, but actually the reason that the helipad engineer was willing to provide a pro bono analysis for us is that Hinton is a regional stroke center, and he is from BC. And he was on vacation in Jasper. His wife had a stroke, and they were not able to get to Hinton, and then ultimately to Edmonton fast enough. His wife ended up passing away. And because of that, he wants to, you know, help us out, was able to do some pro bono analysis for us. So, you know, not only, you know, are we getting some free service, but I thought that was a very powerful example of why a helipad is a very valuable asset for the community. So I just thought I'd share that with council because I thought it was very, you know, a powerful story for the reason why.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Well, and then when we get like the advocacy document, that was where we could get like support for it from all sorts of like the maybe not AHS, but the Hinton Healthcare Foundation, and then a lot of the major companies, a few other groups like that. And attach like dozens of letters to our thing to send it in or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So Ms. McDougall, whenever you're ready. So Mayor Nissen, if you could read this amendment, just to make sure that we've captured what you have said. And I'll have Ms. McDougall put it up again. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I'll require that it be put out for voting for me to read it from where we are. Oh, or share the screen. Thank you. That
No,
is word for word what's in the other document, so that I'm good with that, Madam Chair.
Hey, council, we're gonna deal with this amendment to the,
I'm sure,
I'm sorry,
it wasn't an amendment,
oh, I
it
thought.
was just a suggestion, no, and. That's why I said we should look to the rest of council to make sure there's no opposition to changing wording.
Oh,
If you want, if you want, if you want it to be a formal amendment, that's fine too.
Yeah, my apologies, I missed that. So is everybody fine here moving ahead with this as an amendment? To the initial direction? Go ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, I think it was just some working on the wording, but I don't know if it was a formal amendment. We put it up there, not as a formal amendment, but just as a suggestion that everybody was okay with. So if we're okay with that motion as it reads, I believe that committee could just simply vote on that.
Okay, so we
That
do
one.
not have an amendment to
No.
the initial.
No, we don't.
Super. Thank you so much for that clarification. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. The committee reached consensus to request the province of Alberta to allot necessary dollars to construct and maintain a certified helipad adjacent to the Hinton Hospital and to return to a future meeting of council, please, as soon as that comes up. Please vote now. And that's carried. Council, is there anything else on this, and Councilor Honors?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Wasn't it Councilor Stashik that moved this motion? Yeah, if we could, yeah. It was Mayor Nissen that suggested we add the recommendation into it, but it was Councilor Stashik that moved the motion.
Well, totally true. Mayor Nissen,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Hawes got my point. I'm done with this item. Thank you.
good catch, Councilor Haas. Anything else, council, before we move on? Okay, we're going to move to 5.4 on the agenda. That's on page 33 of the package. Strategic plan and tactical plan update, CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the rest of the committee. So as a part of actually one of our tactical plan reviews is that we do an annual check-in on our strategic and tactical plan. We just ensure that this is a living document that's at the forefront of our attention and that's guiding much of our actions as an organization. So we have gone through that exercise. We have had that check-in with council to ensure that we are still aligned and we're still working on the same things. You know, and I think there were some good insights and some key pivots that have been identified in this document that reflects the reality of Hinton today and some of the emerging priorities of council. So within this document, I believe we have captured that direction, that input from council into this document. So the next step would be for council, or sorry, committee to ensure that everything in here is agreed to. If it is, we will clean up this document into a finalized document to bring this forward to a future council meeting for ultimate adoption. But if there are any questions about anything in here, I would be happy to answer.
Councilor Haas.
Yeah, I didn't see it captured in here, but under the SWOT in the strategic planning working document, we had a conversation in our workshop in regards to threats and the lack of good information via social media and things like that. That can be, and it's not just to our community, but I think it's in general to a lot of communities, but I didn't see that captured under that. And I thought we had kind of landed on something about that. I don't know if you can comment on that. And if anyone else from council can be, but I believe we thought it was misinformation or something as a threat to our community, you know, because we talked about, you know, with the opportunities for development and things like that, if they're getting a bad sense of our community, then they're going to steer away from us. And social media has a tendency of possibly doing that to our community. So I kind of would like to see something of that nature added to that. I don't know what the rest of council believes or thinks should be, but those are my thoughts.
Can I ask,
Go ahead, sir.
you thinking of adding weakness related to that?
No, to a threat, under
Oh,
threats, because
And what would the wording be?
that's where I'd like to turn to administration to how to word that, but I mean, basically the capture the threat of misinformation delivered by social media, you know, that in some ways like that, so. And if it needs a direction to add that, then I can conjure up something.
Through the chair, I do remember that, that was missed from including under the SWOT analysis. I can certainly, I don't have the wording off the top of my head, but I can certainly put something in there, but something related to misinformation related to social media. So if council generally is okay with that, we can, I have that marked down and I can include that in the finalized copy, or if we want to make a specific motion on any individual item, we can do that as well. But I'm okay if council generally is fine with some agreement, that then we could pass it you know, to direct administration to bring this forward to council as amended. I would be fine with that as well, just for simplicity.
Roger, you done?
Yeah.
And getting back with CAO, what you've said, I'm totally fine that you understand what, Council House is saying regarding that, and I don't require much. So. Anybody else?
Fairness.
And I have, Council Taylor first.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor Nissen?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to administration. Perhaps a suggestion on the wording with that of that could be misinformation on social media and a lack of local media. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if all of committee is okay with that, I can certainly make sure that that is incorporated into the finalized.
Maybe does anyone have an issue with that? And I'm seeing and hearing nothing, that's good. And are you stretching or do you have a question, sir?
I know a different question.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
With respect to the SWOT analysis again. I was just wondering if we still needed to keep in difficulty in retaining staff and meet policies. Yeah. So I thought that we had made significant inroads on the retaining staff. Not in there. And we policies, I'm not sure what that means.
Councilor Taylor, could I have you repeat that? I didn't miss.
So let's start with retaining difficulty in retaining staff. We need that, still need that as a weakness. I understand that a year ago was a problem and 2 years ago maybe it was a problem. I'm not sensing it's a problem now, unless I'm totally in a different world. Recruiting and retaining staff, is that a problem now? Any more so than any small town?
Through the chair to council, no, I do agree with both of those, you know, no more difficult than any county in our nature, right? You know, I think we have a very good, strong organization. You know, obviously being a relatively remote community, there's always, and a smaller community, there's always challenges, but I didn't want to take too many liberties related to that, but I do agree with both bulk points, and if council, there's no issues, I think that striking both of those from the weaknesses column, I think would be appropriate.
Hey, council, I want to move away from the SWOT for a minute and go to page 44 on our.
Sorry, point of order.
Sorry?
We
Maybe you
can
can,
finish off this topic.
I'm sorry.
If we can finish off, because I'm in
Oh, sure.
agreement
Yes,
with
sir.
Councillor Taylor, but I'd be interested if there's any objections for the rest of council on eliminating the difficulty recruiting or retaining staff
and we post it.
and weak policies.
So I think we're suggesting that you ask for a consensus if there's anybody who has a problem with that.
I don't know why, I'm just having a heck of a time all of a sudden.
Through the chair, just to eliminate the two topics that Councillor Taylor brought up, being difficulty of recruiting and retaining staff and weak policies. If committee doesn't have an issue with that, I would just confirm that, chair, and then if there isn't, then we can move along.
Committee, does anyone have an issue with what Councillor Taylor has brought up? Mayor Nissen? Good, okay, we're good. Everybody okay if I move on to this big sheet?
Well,
Well, go ahead, sir.
still on SWOT analysis.
Okay.
The other one I thought maybe, well, at least part of, is the lack of local understanding of budget. Okay, lack of local understanding of service levels, okay, I get that, we haven't finished that yet, so that's fair. Lack of local understanding of budget. I think, again, our budgeting process is proved like 110%, and that we're more in command, but we're from a budgeting point of view than we were like a year ago. So I don't know why we would keep listing that as a threat. Why would we do that? Like take, I mean, you can leave lack of local understanding of service levels, we're not quite there maybe. But I would seek, Madam Chair, that we reduce lack of local understanding of budget, at least the budget part of that.
Okay, so you're requesting that lack of local understanding of budget and service levels.
Just the budget part.
Just the budget part, be removed from threats.
Yes.
Councillor House.
If I can add to that, though, I see the lack of, I agree 100% with you, but I would move the lack of understanding of service levels over to weakness and not a threat. Personally, I think that's more of a weakness. We need to be strengthened, which we're working on, all departments and dealing, but I think I don't see that as a threat. I see that more as a weakness to strengthen. I see nodding heads from other counselors, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
Would you agree that we could remove lack of understanding? of budget?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm totally in favor of removing the lack understanding of budget, but I would suggest leave the services, but put it over into weaknesses.
Oh, okay, so what I'm hearing is from Councillor Taylor to remove lack of local understanding of budget, remove that. And Councillor House, you were saying?
Well, if I may, Councillor Taylor said to leave the service, the lack of understanding of service levels. I added to move it into weaknesses out of threats. So.
CIO, your understanding of that conversation is?
Yeah, I am, I have an understanding of it. We're gonna be moving that whole section to weaknesses and eliminating the budget from that column. Yeah.
Council, everybody is all okay with that? And Mayor, you're fine with that? Then Councillor House.
Just a comment about for the public, this may seem trivial, but the SWOT analysis is one of the first things that people see when they open up this document. And, you know, as our CEO has mentioned, you know, the SWOT is something people look at. So I think this is a good exercise for not only the document, but also people outside of the community, inside the community to read this document as well, and to see all those line items removed. So, you know, it may seem trivial when you're listening to this, but there is definitely some advantages to this to our community, so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Council, is there anything else on the SWOT analysis that you'd like to discuss? And we're all good there. So I just quickly wanted to go over, it's page 44, the zinc sheet. And it would be 1.1.4. And it is provide customer service training for all staff. My question is, do you utilize our existing administration, people who are doing such a good job in communicating with our citizens? Do you utilize them in training other staff?
Through the chair, as of right now, to a limited degree, but that's actually a big part of, 1.4. 114 and 115 are actually tied together, and we're actually looking at doing both of those in-house. We do have some actually very good, very well trained individuals on customer service, and we're actually looking at putting an internal working group of those customer service champions to help, help forge the path on what the organization should be focusing on in customer service, and then ultimately advising on what training should we be looking at for all the staff to achieve that element. So we are going to be looking at that as all internal, and that's not really, the plan as of right now is it's not going to be management staff. These are, customer service staff and people who direct or who interact directly with the public on a daily basis.
So I do have just a quick little story to tell you. I was at the front counter one day and there was a lady there speaking with one of our administrative people regarding her bill. A lot of people all of a sudden decided to show up at that counter. Our administration lady came around to the front and said to this customer, I would like to take you into our little committee room so you and I can sit and I can go over this with you to fully understand what the issue is. In a really nice little environment. I was so impressed with her because I could see where this lady at the counter was getting frustrated. And I think our staff person thought that too. So she took this dear little lady to that room. And I go, my God, that's what this is all about. Hey, that type of customer care just was awesome. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I agree. I think that 98% or 99% of our staff do outstanding customer care. I mean, but some don't. And those are the ones that I don't want to wait till 2025 to take care of. Like I spent half an hour to 45 minutes before I came here discussing customer care, customer service with a member of the public. They're identifying part of that 1 or 2% that doesn't seem to be providing customer service. So it's identifying those people and targeting them to get them brought up to everybody else's standard that we need to address, in my opinion, because most of our staff really do an excellent job. It's like any organization, a few that don't. Those are the ones that deal with it. They're capable of providing good customer service.
And that's what I was getting at. We do have people within the organization who are so good. And if we could utilize them in training, maybe new people coming on board, hey? So, I just a small comment. If council has nothing that they want to add, go ahead, Councilor McGowan.
Just the point of inquiry around 431 and 432 at the very bottom of that document. I did notice that it did not include any blue indicators that line it up with a quarter. Can we expect that when those come forward, we'll see a more specified time attributed to them? My assumption was yes, but I just wanted to check it out first.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
through the chair to members of council, yes, we will be filling out all of the specific borders and putting our estimates. Including in the report and finalized clean version.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
One of the things the land zoning that we've done recently has kind of taught me, with respect to the zoning things commercial, is that, I'm a bit surprised that we don't have, proactively identified land near the highway zoned, commercial. I'm wondering if that, because that's its highest and most valued use, I wonder if that would be a economic strategy that we would want to just actually add in there. Saying it like we got where the current development is, Kyle Road, and then we've got all that strip of land all the way down to Highway 40. And we got other strips of land in town maybe that could be commercially zoned, and if the stuff was commercially zoned, it would take us one step further to getting developments into town quicker. We'd have that work done. They would, I'm just suggesting that as an economic strategy, right? Start looking at proactively zoning the strip of land on Highway 60 where possible.
Councilor, you're.
And I
Councilor Hopps.
don't know if anybody has any comments on that.
I guess the only, and I don't disagree with your comments. I'm just wondering for tactically, when I look at it and I look at, for example, 1.2.8 develops a strategy to identify specific commercial and industrial opportunities. And then there's also 1.2.4 preparing an inventory of developable land in Hinton, updated since 2017. So I mean, I'm not disagreeing with the tactic, but I would assume that administration would bring under those two things that I see there, the ideas like that is my thought, but that's my thought.
My thought on your thought is that it's not specific enough.
Right.
They'll get lost in the dust. If you want to actually do something in this regard, you have to have it identified as something you're going to do. If you think it's a good idea. It would make it so much easier for the next development along the highway to have that already proactively taken care of. In fact, some people have said to me they're surprised that that land isn't zoned that way.
So I guess for me, I wouldn't want to add it to this until if it were a motion of council to go that direction and have that conversation to be added to it. I just ad hocly to put it into here. I'm not sure I'm too comfortable with that right now without understanding a little bit better. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just, I need to know more information than in a committee of the whole adding it to this, I guess, and get administration thoughts on that part. Because we did talk about part of it, if I recall, was talking about, is there areas where we could proactively rezone as a tactic? But I don't, you're right, but I wouldn't want to limit it just to that area. That's only my thought, but I thought we had discussed that and it fell under one of them during our workshop, but I'll just leave it at that.
CAO.
Through the chair, Councillor Hawes is correct. So as a part of our inventory of developable land in Hinton, our plan wasn't specific to proactively zoning, but that inventory would really look at what the current zoning is and the vision of that land, which could be sometimes, it is oftentimes different through the municipal development plan or vision documents of the municipality. The two may be different, but identifying though for what you could rezone it for, that was a part of it. But if we did want to look at something specific for the item that Councillor Taylor brings up, we can certainly look at including under 1.2 that the town identified highway commercial land conducive for proactive rezoning or something along those lines could be something. So as a part of building out that inventory of land, we could also identify and bring that specifically forward in the form of a report that would look at possibility of proactively zoning certain lands. So if we want to look at that specifically, we can. It's not really identified, but that inventory of developable land will really be that foundational document that a lot of these strategies are going to spring off.
Counselor Taylor?
Well, to me, that would be the natural or the priority of where to look for future development is along the valuable highway corridor. So if you're gonna do an inventory of land, you automatically do that, or do you need direction to do that?
Through the chair, no, we will be doing the inventory of actually all lands, absolutely, including the highway corridor, but the proactive zoning of highway commercial land or converting, those lands proactively for zoning or land use perspective, we don't have any specific direction to bring that forward. We can certainly look at that as part of the land inventory, but like you mentioned, it's not specific direction that we have.
You good, Counselor Taylor?
Or no?
Counselor Thompson?
Well, and I think until we have that land inventory, because again, I think there are some opportunities to be proactive. But once we have that inventory, then I think that's when because I'm assuming that inventory is to come back to us. Sorry, where did it go now? When is it coming? When is it earmarked to come back to us, that inventory? 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, once that comes back, then would that be the logical then time to have that conversation once we see what the lands are and pinpoint some areas or I mean, yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that, because until I know, we could look at a lot of different opportunities until possibilities, so. But that's the intent, is to bring that inventory back to council to see what we have. Okay. I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to page 48, 3.5.2. On the big paper. Council debriefs following council and committee of the whole meetings. It says under budget that is in budget. We don't charge for those debriefings, so why would that stay there? What's on our time?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's just a result of the our limited options when it came to that column where it's in budget or out of budget. So just to say that no additional, it's just part of our regular operating budget. It doesn't cost us any. It doesn't cost the municipality anything to do that. It's just saying that no additional budget is required for this item.
Oh,
Is really what it is, but yeah.
just so that our citizens know that that debriefing time, we are not putting in time. Okay, good. Excellent. Council, anything further on this? Go ahead, sir.
Well, I don't know if this consensus or motion, but I'd like to look at removing the property tax ID on the development of vacant land.
Which number?
131. I don't think it's fair to tell somebody, tax somebody, in order that they start developing it. Might not have the money, they might not have the money, so. That just doesn't seem like, seems like a very anti-business kind of message. By all means, let's make sure that whatever land they have is fairly, assessed in comparison to other vacant land in town, but, I seek your consensus to remove the implementation of a minimum property tax from this document.
Sure, say again what number that is on this big.
131.
131. So, council, any discussion on what Counselor Taylor's bringing up? Counselor Haas?
Well, I want to clarify, is this an official motion? Consent, seeking consensus to remove this?
Yeah, that part,
Okay, so if we can then
sure, let's vote it
proceed
up
that
there.
way and then have discussion.
I think it's interesting, it's gonna be worthy of a motion.
Counselor McGill, was that your question?
No, ma'am, I'm ready to speak to it, but I believe Councillor Hawes is ahead of me.
Implementation of a minimum property tax on vacant land,
And that was what?
that's part of 131.
So Counselor Taylor, do you want to take a look at this direction and see if there?
And seek consensus to remove, implementing a minimum property tax on vacant land. And that is part of, section 131.
Something with your opinion, right?
Right, and I just think that's a good strategy to, try to tax somebody into spending money on business. It's been backfired.
So council, we do have a direction on the floor. Counselor Haas, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, sir.
I won't be in favor of this. I think that we need to have this discussion. And actually, this was, an issue that came up at the latest Chamber of Commerce Beer and Blue Jeans event. And there was a lot of comments on land that people are sitting on and doing nothing with it. And we don't have any leverage. And so there was a very strong attitude, I felt, and I know Mayor Nissen was there, but felt there was a lot of interest in, and I believe our CEO was also brought into the conversation that bringing forward, maybe not just this, but what other mechanisms can we do to entice these landowners to start developing and not just sit on it? And it was the legacy lands that was the word that was used during the Beer and Blue Jeans. So at this point, until I can see what the options are, I wouldn't be in favor of this at this time. I think it needs to have a further conversation about it. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Counselor McGill?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not in support of this either. And again, going to what Councillor Hawes has said, it's also about the red addition that's indicated on page 2 of 6, or other mechanisms, because I think really what you're looking at is carrot or stick. There's a variety of methods that can be utilized to encourage the release of these lands in a way that benefits the town. Because I mean, without specifically pointing out an area, physically the town bears the scars of, I mean, call it what it is, land speculation over decades. And we've had to grow up around some of these areas because this land hasn't been released and it has been sat on. And at the end of the day, I don't think that's fair to the citizens of the town. It's one thing to go and buy up a chunk of land, but that has to have purpose. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's a benefit to the citizens not to explore this. So I can't support it this time.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Stasha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ask administration a question regarding what their interpretation of minimum property tax levy means.
Through the chair to committee, a minimum property tax is really just a minimum payable tax that a municipality is going to apply to a tax bill. So if your regular assessment times the mill rate would dictate that your property tax is $40, but the minimum property tax is 50, it would just bring everybody up to that baseline minimum. So it's a minimum payable property tax.
Ask a clarifying question.
Yes, sir.
So it's just a flat dollar fee minimum, regardless of how big the chunk of property is.
Through the chair, yes. That's correct.
Okay, if I could speak to it. So I'm fine with removing that then. I don't see that problem is with individual lot owners that own one lot that might not meet the minimum threshold. The problem is with the landowners that own large parcels of land that are very likely well over whatever the minimum would be anyway. Those are the ones that need to be either enticed or forced one way or the other to do something with that land that in some cases has been held for 20, 30 years. So I don't know that having a minimum property tax levy on undeveloped land would be much of a stick, which is why I'm okay with taking it out and looking at some other measures. Maybe if there was a minimum per square meter, then that might be worthy of looking at, but just putting a across the board minimum, I don't think would achieve the end that we would be trying to achieve there.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, you know, when I worded that, I didn't take out the part about other mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land. I never said that. I just said take out the minimum property tax.
Gotcha.
That's the part I wanted to take it out. Like, I think there might be vacant land in this town, maybe that's not assessed properly, and it's more of an assessment issue, right? Because I have people that tell me that on a regular basis, that we have certain pieces of land that aren't fairly assessed. For whatever reason, so I get that regular.
Councillor House.
So thank you. That was gonna be my clarifying question, because I don't disagree with that. I guess I looked at it, you wanted to remove 1.3.1 altogether. So you're just saying to exclude the minimum property tax levy, but other mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land, that remains as 1.3.1.
Right, because
Okay.
another mechanism might be get a special appraisal on some of those lands to make sure it's fairly assessed.
So if I may, then I will be in favor of just removing that part, but I still am in favor of then those other mechanisms. So I guess I'd have to see the motion just so we make sure that we captured and we're not, okay. Okay. As long as administration is fine with that, then I'm good with that.
Councillor Magoo.
Yeah, then thank you, Councillor Taylor, for that recommendation or that clarification. Because then, yeah, the same as Councillor Hawes, that changes my viewpoint on it entirely. Thank you.
Okay, good. Council, any more discussion on this direction? Okay, I will call the question. The committee seeks consensus to remove implementing a minimum property tax on vacant land. And this is located on section 1.3.1. We need a heading CAO of this sheet here. It's like we're just saying 1.3.1. Does this have a
Of
heading?
the tactical plan,
I'm sorry?
of the tactical plan.
Madam Chair, I have a question of clarification.
Go ahead, sir.
Seeing as I'm unable to see the motion or the consensus at this time, but the way it was just read out, we're not implementing, and the tactical plan does not talk about implementing a minimum property tax. It talks about looking at the potential implementation along with other mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land. So I need to hear that wording of the amendment or the motion again, please.
Okay.
Do we not want to investigate, or have we decided that this is actually saying something else? Is the clarification I require? Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll read it again so everybody is clear on this direction. And Councillor Taylor, I have at the very end added tactical plan.
So that's fine.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Is that fine with everybody? Good. The committee seeks consensus to remove implementing a minimum property tax on vacant land. Located in section 1.3.1 of the tactical plan. Mr. Mayor?
Madam Chair, I am concerned about the wording of this motion in our minutes. It's going to look like we had a plan to implement a minimum property tax on vacant land. We've never had that plan. This is simply looking at options for what we can do with vacant land in our tactical plan. So I do not support this motion as it is worded. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Scotcher.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd hate to see this fall by the wayside for want of better wording, so if there's some alternate wording that would clarify. I would suggest just adding. I can't see it, but instead of removing implementation, remove the wording and then put it in quotes or something, I don't know.
CEO.
Madam Chair, if I can, I do understand what Mayor Nissen is saying. My hope is that look at implementation is just really to, or possibly consider implementation of this type of plan. We can look at the wording, but we would probably have to look at wording of quite a few of these tactics, just because that is the common language that has been used throughout the tactical plan on, to consider implementation of this. But maybe just a clarity point that administration does not take that as formal council direction to implement any file without council blessing. So, even if you look down on that same line, it's implement priority action items from the economic development strategic plan. Those would require a specific, ultimately, decision of council of what to implement and when, and a report that would go forward for council to decide how, or even if we wanted to do that. So all of these will be accompanied by report, especially if they require any policy changes, or as these items would, or require any budget or any other items under council authority.
And so where my concern is for people who read this in the minutes, but don't listen to this meeting, they're not hearing what you're saying.
So through the chair to members of council, or members of the committee, if everyone would be more comfortable, we could just look at even putting really, instead of implement, just saying consider implementation as a part of all of these different items, because there are quite a few that use that. What's that word?
May I?
Mr. Taylor.
Could I not look at revising that to modify section 131 to say, look at implementation of other mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land? That's what we modify it to, and then that takes care of it.
I'm just gonna go to Mayor Nissan and see if that satisfies. Mayor
Thank you,
Nissan?
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Taylor actually got to my point as well. My suggestion was let's reword our motion to simply change the wording of item 131 in the tactical plan. My concern is not the wording in the tactical plan. My concern is the wording in our minutes from this meeting and the potential political fallout of somebody misreading our motion today and thinking that we had a plan to implement a new tax of some sort. So I would go with Councillor Taylor's amended language. That would be satisfactory to me. Thank you.
So I seek everybody's consensus to change what we have up there to
And if you could talk this way and then this, people can hear what you're saying.
right, well, change 131 to look at implementation of other mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land. That just leaves out that part of minimum property tax. Which is essentially what I want.
If you repeat it, just let me know. I will, I'm sorry.
I will just say thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may make a quick suggestion, if we're doing the language, the other mechanisms, It could just be look at implementation of mechanisms. We don't necessarily need other in there if we're removing the bit about the minimum property tax. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Counselor Taylor. We're gonna put it up on the board again for you to read it. And to make sure that this reflects what you're thinking.
Yes,
You're fine with that, sir?
yes,
So-
that's accurate, I think.
Okay, good. So Mayor Nissen, I'm gonna read this motion. So you are clear on what it says. Or hopefully I'll read it, so you. The committee seeks consensus to change the wording in 1.3.1 to look at implementation of mechanisms to encourage development of vacant land. Does that capture what you're thinking?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And yes, it does. And I can support the wording of this motion at this time. Thank you.
So, council, we do have a direction. What I'm kind of getting a feel from you is that, we're getting a lot of positive support for this, so I'm going to call the questions. The committee seeks consensus to change the wording in 1.3.1 to look at implementation of mechanisms to encourage development of vacant lands. Now, before we vote, if everybody understands this, we're good. Okay, it's up on the screen, so please vote no.
Madam Chair, I don't have it. I vote in favor.
Thank you, and it kind of went away. So. And I don't know why I did. Everybody else gonna lose it?
I had, if I may, Madam Chair, I had it and it's just saying process.
Yeah.
Not sure. My vote. I see.
Okay, so if we can do this by hand, that would be great. So all those in favor? And Mayor Nissen?
I am in favor.
Okay, thank you. So, and then it's carried. And there it is. And that is carried. Council, any questions before we move on to our next topic, our next report? Let me have Taylor and Haas. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, anything in backstroke here, but I was hoping to seek your consensus to remove under strength competitive utility rates. I was just thinking that for 2024, this is a plan for 2024, and we're going to identify this as our strength for 2024, and then we're going to put out information that says that your utility rate has to go higher in order to help pay for a water treatment plant, which could kill the competitiveness of it. Is that worth removing? Or does it matter?
Councilor Snatcher.
I'm gonna ask, is that a consensus request or just a talking?
A consensus request.
Okay, if it's a formal consensus request, I'll speak to it. So the strength used to say low utility costs and it's been changed to competitive utility costs. And I do support that. Our utility costs, even with proposed changes, are still
Oh, yeah, you're right.
more than competitive with a lot of our municipal comparators.
I missed that part. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, it's okay. Believe it.
Councilor Haas.
Well, I'm gonna premise this first by looking at council that we've hashed out a few things, but is there anything else? Because I'm prepared to make the motion that committee seek consensus to refer the strategic plan and tactical plan update to the regular council meeting as amended, but unless there's others.
Point of order.
Oh,
Yes, there's a consensus request on the table.
oh, I apologize. Okay, I apologize. My bad.
I see consensus to remove it. Councillor Sasha make a good point. I think he's got a good idea.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk to all of council right now. Council, now do we have to vote on him? Yes, we do. So, and Sherman, you can capture that, Councillor Taylor would like to, remove or withdraw his, consensus. So, both times, committee seeks consensus to withdraw the motion.
Matt, we want to help him off that and I'm in favor.
We lost.
We can do this by hand. Have all those in favor?
I'm in favor.
And that's carried.
There it is now.
So thank you, and that's carried. CEO. And I have to apologize for this. I never did put his first motion instruction up. So we just voted on a direction that nobody saw.
Through the chair, I just asked the clerk if you captured that original motion, so it was captured,
Okay.
Chair, so. And then we do have the motion to withdraw, so we're okay on that one.
All right. So I think we're at Councillor Haas, yes?
Yeah, if there's no other changes from the rest of council, then I'd move the committee seek consensus to refer the strategic and tactical plan update to the regular council meeting as amended.
And what option is that?
It's the recommended option. Or I guess it's number 2 because it's as amended.
So council, we have the direction on the screen. Has everybody read it? So any more discussion before I call the question? And nothing? The committee seek consensus to refer the strategic and tactical plan update to the next regular council meeting as amended. Council, as soon as it comes. And please vote now. And that's carried. Council, is there any further discussion? And I'm seeing no one, so we're gonna move on to our report 5.5, and that's page 50 on your agenda. And CEO.
Thank you, Chair, to members of committee. So I'm bringing this forward today to introduce council to the idea of establishing and going down the road of establishing an intermunicipal subdivision and development appeal board. currently where we sit is, we were a part of a ISDAB, back in 2019, with the Green part, sorry, I guess it would have been the, town of Grand Cache. You know, as when that municipality underwent an amalgamation, Greenview had made the decision to rescind the agreement. So from that point, I don't believe we've had an active SDAB in place. We do have a responsibility to have this board in place, so if subdivision development appeals do come in, that we can handle them effectively. We will be seeking members to establish our board, but, you know, I think this is, with this coming to light and ensuring that we can fulfill our responsibilities, I'm recommending that we move forward with an intermunicipal subdivision development appeal board. You know, when we looked at this, and it was obvious that we haven't had an appeal since 2019 because we haven't had a board to deal with it. You know, it's challenging for those board members to be a part of communities who don't get many appeals, just because there is legislated training requirements. It is expensive for municipalities to do. And if you have to have enough people to have a full board for one appeal every, you know, 4 to 5 years, it just becomes very difficult for small communities. So I do believe that having an intermunicipal subdivision development appeal board is advantageous and just a little bit more efficient for small communities. But with that being said, that also means that somebody from another municipality could be looking at the specific planning issues in your community, making rulings. And so, you know, there's that context there as well. But we have reached out to the town of Edson, who does have an established SDAB. You know, we were interested in looking at establishing this relatively quickly, just because we do have some pending developments that, you know, an appeal is could be likely. But I believe that we could establish this ISDAB relatively quickly. It's a relatively straightforward process. It would require council to pass a bylaw and the supporting agreements in order to create this body. With that said, if there's any questions on this, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. And Councilor Magoo.
Yeah, I'd like to take the recommended action that committee directs administration to return an intramunicipal subdivision and development appeal board bylaw and agreement with the town of Edson to a future meeting of council.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to speak to it?
No, I think this is one of those routine things that we just have to take care of. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Council, we do have a direction on the floor. Any discussion? And Mayor Nissan? And I will call the question. The committee directs administration to return an intermunicipal subdivision and development appeal board bylaw and agreement with the town of Edson to a future meeting of council. And council, please vote now. And that is carried. Council, any further discussion on this? And nothing, we're going to move on to reporting. Mayor Nisbet, I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as I mentioned at the start of this meeting, Councillor Chambers and myself are both at the Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association conference this week. It's been interesting working sessions with some of the ADMs. We're hearing a lot about the new provincial budget and some of the housing, big housing dollars that the province is putting into municipalities. And hopefully some of that will lead to some good news for us down the road. And that's all I have for reporting today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
and Councillor
Nothing to report.
Councillor Stasher.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Councillor Haas.
Nothing to report.
I have a short report. Tomorrow I'll be attending the ESN meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope other councillors are able to attend. Yet, I think the doors open at 8 and the speaker starts at 8:30. Thursday, Friday, I will be attending the Leaders Caucus in Edmonton. I'm looking forward to that, hearing all the ministers speak. And then on Monday, I will be at the RMA in an all-day session on land development. Taking what all that's about. And that's it. So we'll see you.
Thank you, Chair. We have included our February operating highlight report. If there's any questions on that, happy to answer.
And so any questions on the report from the man? No.
Sorry, Ross says it.
Councillor Ross?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense. I noticed there's some vandalism happening that require repairs at the rec center. What kind of vandalism are we seeing? And because I'll be honest, we had some happening in our library as well. And so we've been investigating ways in which to try to police it better and also mitigate it. We actually just came up with a plan that possibly putting game cameras in there to monitor it. But I'm just curious what kind of vandalism is occurring, what kind of repairs are required if it seems to be noteworthy.
Go ahead, Mr.
Through the
Dubois.
chair to all of committee, I actually anticipated that question and reworded it to make it a little more accurate when it came to me.
Okay.
It's basically, hockey sticks hitting overhead signs, a hole in the wall here, just, stuff like that, just.
Okay. So if I may, Madam Chair, so it's not necessarily intentional, it's accidental with playing hard in the hallways that we see often.
Either playing hard or angry at a loss or something, those kind of things.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it at that then. I'm sure in your capable hands of figuring out what to do about it, so thank you.
Secretary, do you have anything to report? And so we're gonna move on to number 7, and that's correspondence and information items. 7.1. May I have a direction to accept? Go ahead, sir.
I'll move to accept correspondence for information, please.
Council, I will call the question, the committee accept ACP letter of approval for information. And please vote now. And that is carried. Council, anything? Oh, Councilor McGill.
I'd like to move that we go into closed session.
Call the question that committee move into closed session. Please vote now. And that is carried. We're moving into closed session at 18:28 or 6:28. We're gonna call for a little 7-minute break right now.
Sure, please.